All right, we're live. Welcome back to the Cranmer Fellows podcast. I'm Jonathan Groves. I'm the assistant rector at Church of the Good Shepherd in Binghamton, New York. And I'm joined once again with my co-host, Matt Kennedy, rector of Church of the Good Shepherd and canon for preaching in Anglican Diocese of the Living Word. Today, we are going to discuss an ancient heresy called Marcionism that Matt has actually led our church already through in a series that we're going through in our Christian Ed Hour. So it should be a breeze for him to help us think through these things. But Matt, how are you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Good. Doing all right. You having a good Lent?
Yes, so
Lent.
far so good. I haven't cheated on my discipline yet, so
Oh, yeah? What's your discipline? Are you
I
allowed?
can't say or I won't get any reward. I've got to be quiet.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just... Well, you could get a reward. You
Yeah, it's different.
I understand. It's just what kind of reward you want. Very good. Well, we didn't do a podcast last week because we were stuffing our faces with pancakes on Show Tuesday. Last night we did the guys at the church did our first gathering. We started it last year. We do a little like Lenten gathering. We have readings. We do these things called pods where we get guys together, like 3 or 4 guys together, and they throughout the week can kind of keep up with each other. So it was a pretty good turnout last night. So I'm encouraged by it. But yeah, should be a good Lent.
Yeah.
Well, we're back at it, and we're going to talk about a heretic. So we're talking about Marcion, and he was a 2nd century heretic. And but before we talk about him, we can't talk about him without first discussing this idea called Gnosticism for a little bit. So Matt, I wonder if you can briefly help us think about what is Gnosticism. What's this idea going on in the early church and even before?
Sure. I mean, I guess you want to speak in terms of Gnosticisms because there's lots of. It's hard to like summarize all the systems together because there are so many of them and different variations. Um, but essentially, it's inherently a kind of uh, a Greek philosophical concept that uh, poses a radical dualism between matter and and uh, and the divine. And one of the problems the Greeks always wrestle with who come into Christianity is this idea that matter is a bad thing, that the physical world is an evil thing because it can be corrupted and ruined and destroyed. And so the quest from, I guess, a Greek spirituality perspective is to escape those things that are passing away and to be found in kind of an eternal spiritual realm of light. And so what the Gnostics propose is that our world, the material world, is the creation of a demiurge, an aeon. Let me go back, explain what an aeon is. In this conception, God, I guess, or the essential unmoved mover, the being who is, um, uh, began to emanate from himself these things called aeons, and there's a whole plethora of them called a pleroma of aeons emanating from this one source. And the further you go down in this chain of aeonic beings, you come to one who turns out to be rather evil and uh, to do harm, I guess, to the other aeons, maybe even to the chief the highest being. He, well, again, this is with different systems, different ideas, but he captures some divine beings in flesh. Um, and so some Gnostic systems say all human beings are really divine sparks imprisoned in flesh. Other Gnostic systems say that only some are, and others aren't. And so, for the Gnostics, what you want to do uh, is find your true inner spiritual self, your true shimmering uh, divinity, and they'll have rituals and practices to enable you to live in accordance with this inner self. And the reason the word Gnostic means knowledge, comes from the Greek word for knowledge, which is gnosis, and to be different sects had different ways of accessing your divine inner self and escaping the limitations of your flesh. So Christian Gnostics would use uh, the scriptures to do that. They had special secret readings of the scriptures. Secrets were embedded in the Bible. To find out what those secrets were, you had to associate yourself with a special Gnostic teacher who would give you the knowledge, get you in the know, and then you could become one of the spiritual people. And to to the extent that you um, uh, uh, progress, you could become a master yourself. Or you could remain plain old. Some people are incapable. In some Gnostic systems, you're just going to be incapable of ever ascending into the cosmic plane because you don't have the divine spark that others do. Uh, but
Oh,
but typically, if you progress through the system, that means you have the divine spark. So there's some incentive to go deep.
there are levels of knowledge.
Yes, yes.
Levels of
Oh,
knowledge.
absolutely right, right.
Yeah, sounds like Scientology.
It does. It's not Scientology, but I mean, it's also like we talked in the class about how this sense of my true self is my inner self, and my inner self is divine. I mean, that's Richard Rohr. that's 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 all over the place today. That is the gospel of our present day, which is the gospel of the self, your identity being the inner you, who you have to discover. And once you discover that true you, you can only be happy if you're living in accordance with that true you. And everything has to change, right? And very similarly to the Gnostic ideal, your body doesn't matter that much. Your body can be changed, mutilated. The Gnostics didn't do that, but in the modern day, your body is should be molded in order to fit with the inner self. The Gnostics had two different ways of thinking about the body. One is we have to be really ascetic. This is probably I think this is probably the dominant view for strange reasons, but it is. Be really ascetic and starve off the desires of the body because those are the things that are keeping you bound to the material world.
Mm.
And the other side, other Gnostics said, well, you can just your body doesn't matter. It's your body is nothing, so you can live how you want to live. And those are the more libertine
Huh.
Gnostics.
Interesting. Was there a connection between how you, uh, like with asceticism, it would make sense that there's a connection between your ascetic lifestyle and the knowledge that you have. Do you know of like a connection between like the knowledge one has and the amount of pleasure they have? Would they have seen that as connected?
I don't know for sure. I know that on the ascetic side, the more you the more you fast, the more you starve your body, the more the passions are curbed and and the desires are stilled, and you can become more spiritual by not feeling these bodily urges, trying to escape from the slavery of the body. The libertine side, I think the thought is it it's not even it's so irrelevant. Your body's so irrelevant that you can have pleasure or not. It just doesn't matter because the way you ascend is not through killing off the desires of your body or indulging in desires of your body. You're a spirit being.
Kind of like, yeah, you're like a brain in a vat almost. Whatever you do
Yeah,
with the body doesn't matter.
yeah, yeah. It's very much like that. Thinking about hideous strength, actually. So
So do this idea about uh, the separating of the spiritual from matter, this dualistic idea of matter being um, ultimately bad. Wh- where did that come from with the Greeks? Why did that? Why was that a big idea that they had?
Well, I mean, the perfect is immutable, right? From the Greek perspective, change always marks imperfection. So, so the God, Plato was, had this idea. So God would not, can't change. He's an unchangeable being. So what does change a lot? Well, the material world will changes a lot. What has to have a cause? The material world has to have a cause. What is the uh, what's subject to passions? The material world is subject to passion. So all of that marks the material world as lower and in some ways gross. And
Mhm.
not for all Greece, but for Greece in this philosophical milieu, it was gross to have a body. I mean, all the bodily functions signal the rotting of the flesh, the changing of the person in the body, or the changing of the body just marks it off as a bad thing. You're subject to passion. You're subject to the whims of your body. You get sick. You get carried away by desire. You get carried away by um, all kinds of things. If you can escape that bondage, um, it's better. Stoics had the same kind of idea about escaping the passions that the Gnostics had. They just different. They have a different system, but same idea.
So entered this character Jesus, and uh, and you're having the apostles say that he's the Son of God, that he died, that he rose again. Do you think that the reason, or do you think that, um, speaking um, in an earthly perspective, um, one of the avenues that Gnosticism got into the church was uh, to ease up on the fleshy side of Jesus in order to be to have like a hearing with the Greeks, you think? Like, because
Yeah,
that
I mean,
message of Son of God being in the flesh w- would then be pretty hard for a Greek to hear.
if you're trying to package Christianity for a thinking Greek person, and an elite, not for the average Greek, but I'm talking about the elites. If you want to impress the thinkers of the day, and you have a God who becomes man and subjects himself to mortality and death, and in the body, well, that's unthinkable. That's not going to fly with your intellectual elites. So you've got to. So if you really want to reach them, you got to modify things. Oh, and here's this idea that kind of, it's not, you can fit some Gnostic ways of thinking into some things that Paul says, for example, the flesh counts for nothing, the spirit is everything. Um, a lot of language where when Paul's talking about the flesh, of course, he's talking about the fallen nature. Um, but you can take that language and apply it to the body, right? And then you have a duality that's very much like the Gnostics want it to be. So there's kind of a ready thing there. And then what the Gnostics would say is, well, to make it work, then Jesus um, was a man. Uh, there's two ways this works. Cerinthius said Jesus was a man inhabited by God, inhabited by a spirit, the Christ spirit, uh, who departed before the crucifixion, came in at the baptism, departed before the crucifixion. Other systems are docetic. Uh, they would say, like the, the poem, the footprints on the beach. Where you're looking at
Oh
you
yeah.
look back in your life, you see the two footprints, and you say, "Oh Lord, I see that there's parts here that you weren't walking with me. There's only one set of footprints," and then that the Jesus is, "Oh no, my son, that's when I was carrying you." Well, if you're rewriting that for the Gnostics, there would only always be one set of footprints, just your footprints,
Yours.
because Jesus never doesn't have footprints. His body isn't real. His
Yep.
body is just an appearance of a body, and so he appeared to suffer. He appeared to be, going through the various human motions that he goes through. And so, of course, um, he didn't need to rise from the dead in the same way that Orthodox Christianity talks about him rising from the dead. He just appeared again in
Mhm.
this mock body.
So you have this philosophy that's already in play and in Greek culture, and then the gospel hits. Um, and clearly, I mean, at least in John's day, we know that Gnosticism is a, a contradiction to the church in the time. There's Gnostics who are trying to, uh, uh, as you said, package their own philosophy, but in language of the
Yeah,
language of the apostles, right? So it's not something that uh, I guess would Marcion be the first one that we know of by name, or do we know others by name before?
Martian was not a Gnostic. He took some Gnostic ideas, but he wasn't. I wouldn't say he's a Gnostic, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Um, but uh, Valentinian, I think, had the most one of the more prominent systems. If you look, Irenaeus writes about him. So does uh, Tertullian. So the different schools of thought. But the same, I think we should point out, and it's this desire to make Christianity acceptable
Yeah.
to the academic intellectual elite is still with us, and the willingness to silence certain aspects of the faith to make it appeal um, to the intellectual elite is a really strong urge
Oh yeah.
on the part of Christians who want so badly for the academy to give us respect, for the smart people who write for the New York Times and the people who teach at Harvard and the people who teach at Columbia to give us intellectual cred.
Yeah.
So how can we do that? Well, we got to be affirming. Well, we got to do away with this idea, or do away with that idea, and then maybe they'll respect us, and then we can. And the whole purpose, of course, is evangelism, so we can bring them to Jesus.
Yeah.
Um,
Strip Jesus of everything he is and then bring them to nothing or no one. That's what that method is.
exactly.
Yeah, you have to get rid of his miracles. You got to get rid of the virgin birth. You got to get rid of the resurrection. You got to get rid of the atonement. Well,
Yep.
what do you have left? Um,
A
uh,
leftist professor.
yeah. Um, so okay, well then let's let's move to Marcion then. Who's Marcion? When does he come on the scene? What's his deal?
Marcian is from a town called Sinope. I'm not sure I'm even pronouncing that right. In northern Africa. He's the son of a bishop, actually a Christian bishop, and he's made his way. He's pretty wealthy. He's Sinope is a port town. He makes his money in the shipping business, and he moves to Rome around 130 something AD, and he contributes a whole bunch of money to the church. Right, so uh, that when that happens in our day or in their day, that means people are going to listen to you, right?
Yeah.
You're going to get some open ears when if someone comes along and gives Good Shepherd $1 million check. It's going to be hard to hard to have any crosswords for the guy. Uh, so so the the he moves to Rome. He begins in Rome. It doesn't seem like he had his ideas in Northern Africa. It seems like he begins to get them in Rome, and it's probably because he gets access to some Gnostic thought. Like I said, he's not a Gnostic, and there's two main things that differentiate him from the Gnostics is that he doesn't have this idea of the aeons and aeons and aeons and aeons and the pleroma. There's two gods for Marcion. Um, there's the God who created all things, and here's a similarity between him and the Gnostics, not a difference. He's the God who made the material world is an evil God. And he has entrapped our spirits in this fleshly prison. So he would agree with the Gnostics on that. But then there's another God. There's uh, there's Jesus, and he comes to free us from the Old Testament God, and so he is also not in the flesh. He's his appearance of the flesh, but he's not in the flesh. So there's a lot of similarity between the Gnostics and him, but another difference is that is that for Marcion, it's not a secret. Right? That you don't have to have a special access to get the secret cool kids code to get into the understanding of the gospel. He's all out there. Um, he's more than happy to have a public proclamation of what he considers the gospel. What's driving him is not so much, although it's there, the desire to get break out of the prison of the flesh, but what's driving him primarily is abhorrence of the notion of judgment, wrath, law, and the rigidity that he sees in the Old Testament God and the bloodiness of him. And so he says that all of that all of that law heavy, guilt heavy, wrath heavy stuff cannot be consistent with what we see in Jesus. And so Jesus is all grace, all love, all mercy, all the time. Uh, there was no room in Martian's head for a God who is both gracious and the judge. You can't have the two in the same sphere. So, because that's true, uh, our scriptures, he would say, have been corrupted by the followers of the Creator God, the Jews. So it's a very anti-Semitic way of thinking about things too. So we've got to free the scriptures from the Jews who are in the service of this evil God. And the way to do that is to cut off, unhitch, as Andy Stanley would say, unhitch from the Old Testament. And then not only that, we got to highly edit the New Testament so that references back to the Old Testament are cut out. And anything in the New Testament that appears to affirm the Old Testament view of God is going to be removed. So we just have grace, the God of grace.
It's so fascinating when you look back at all this stuff and you realize just how far we've not come.
Yeah.
It's all. I remember having a discussion with an acquaintance a few years back, and this was before I was at Good Shepherd, and I was hanging out with this guy, and he was explaining to me this book that he was reading, this new book, and he was explaining the premise, and it was basically Marcionism. It was good bad God of the Old Testament, the good God of the New Testament, and in that moment, I was like, wait, what are you, what are you, what are you talking about? And then like a few years later, I was studying a little bit more church history, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's nothing new under the sun. Um, and all of this, you see a pattern with a heresy. It always starts with uh, an outside idea, um,
Yeah.
or maybe even more specifically, like something within yourself, that you then impose onto his scriptures. Because the only way Marcion can get uh, his idea, and he doesn't even get it that perfectly because he has to take out a lot of texts and it still doesn't work. Um, it's not he doesn't start with the text to try and figure out the contradictions that he says there are.
Right.
He just says there are contradictions. I mean, Tertullian, he says that basically Marcion just read one text in the Old Testament and then just said, "Oh, there you go. God is the bad God in the Old Testament." Um, but when you start from your own like misunderstanding, say like with the problem of evil and suffering, and then you try to form the scriptures around yourself and your own ideas. That's when you get something like this, something that is ultimately incoherent. Um, that's why you have to start with the scriptures and then work your way out, and and lay down your preconceived notions, your philosophies, your feelings. You have to lay them down at the foot of the Bible and let the Bible rework them.
That's exactly right. And I think it's hard because you come in. I remember being a young Christian, new to the faith, and you come in, you have an idea of what justice is because you just you I know what justice is. You go into the Bible, you read, oh, there God would have us do justice. So that must mean I should act in accordance with the justice I already know. Uh, but that's why we have exegesis. That's what exegesis is. What does justice mean in the scriptures? Well, how does God define justice? And how God defines justice is justice. And if that conflicts with our preconceived idea of what justice is, well, then our preconceived idea of just what justice is wrong.
Yeah.
Love. What's love? Well, I mean, everyone thinks they know what love is. Love is that really warm feeling you get when you look at somebody who's hot, or you, or the desire to be kind to somebody. That's love. Or the there's all kinds of weird ideas about what love is in the world. Um, and so people read, well, Jesus is about love. God is love, and so that must mean that my ideas about what love is who God is. So you're just directly reading yourself into the heavens as God, is like you said, and so it takes discipline to now. Wait a minute, it what does this scripture mean when it says God is love? Does love mean romance? Does love mean um, this complete affirmation of everything everyone wants to do at any time, any place? So what does love mean? And if you take the time to examine that, you say, okay, now wait a minute. There's a lot more nuance to. There's a lot more complexity to what the Bible means by love than what our culture means by love.
Yeah. Yeah. And, going back to this idea of, bad God in the Old Testament, good God in the New, to say nothing about, how that's just too simplistic anyway. I mean, you have way too many texts in the Old Testament that talk about God's love and his mercy, and then way too many texts in the New Testament that talk about Jesus.
Yeah.
But also, um, if God isn't just, then how can he be good? Yeah, like it's fascinating to me that Marcion's trying to he's trying to answer this idea about one of the things he's trying to answer is the problem of evil, and yet
Yeah.
the system that doesn't do anything with evil doesn't actually, in a satisfying way, take care of it. Um, the only way you take care of it is you have a God who is both just, and merciful. You can't have, um, you can't have a God that's simply like a simple mercy or a simple justice. He has to have both, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have to look into. I didn't. I have to go back and read some of Tertullian's stuff again. But I don't remember whether Marcion. I'm sure he doesn't believe that human beings are evil inherently. Like I don't think he would believe that human beings are inherently evil. Um.
Yeah, like you mean like have a simple
Oh.
nature,
Hum.
like
Have
they
been,
have a simple nature.
the reason I thought so if you don't believe that, if you don't, the reason I think he might not believe that is should go back and check this is because if you don't if that's the way you think human beings are, then the real problem is the externals, right? The real problem is maybe the flesh, or the real problem is other people being bad and influencing you in a bad way.
Yeah.
And so if it's society, and if you could just educate everyone about what's really good, then everyone would start behaving really well. and then we wouldn't need justice because everyone is truly inherently good, and then the love would be overflowing. There'd be no need for any law or rules or anything, right? So I think that's where he's getting at. What he's getting at.
Yeah.
The reason there's evil is because this bad God created bodies,
He
created an
did.
external system and a society that makes people do bad things.
Yeah. It, the issue is if you have somebody who in the body wrongs you, does something bad to you, well, you don't have a um you can't hope in like an injustice. You
No, no,
can't hope that you'll be justified if you're in the right and they're in the wrong. Um, all you can hope is that one day out of the body, but there's not going to be any. What's the justice for what happened to you? And then also the reality that you experienced in the world, where you and I know, like deep down, because it's written on our hearts, the importance of justice
yeah.
here on earth. Then wouldn't you expect that then from a good God?
You would. I think under Martian system, and when the good God wins out, the old God and everybody with him goes to
Mm,
die. Right. Right.
okay.
So there. I don't think he'd call it justice. I think he'd probably call it the victory of love. Right. Love wins out, and everyone who wants that other way of being just is going to be. It's going to be
It's
just
gone.
yeah, with that other God. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Um, it's
I mean, there's a lot we don't know because we only have Tertullian's stuff and other people's stuff against Martian. I don't think we have anything by Martian himself. So,
yeah.
um,
Man, you mentioned Andy Stanley. Um, it's it's just interesting to uh just going back to there being nothing new under the sun, but it's interesting to see how not even with Andy Stanley. I think the spirit of uh, skepticism of the Old Testament is in a lot of people.
yeah,
That even like true believers who uh, love God and love the Bible, you'd open up the Old Testament and think, man, like is this really for me? And that it's you can kind of you know being maybe a little nice here, but you can kind of sympathize with Marcy and and be like, man, like he dealt with what a lot of people continue to deal with. It's hard to sometimes reconcile these things or balance the things of the Old Testament and in the New. Do you have any uh, thoughts on that, or just advice on somebody who's struggling with reading the Old Testament and trying to figure out what is this balance between God who says to Israel to kill the Canaanites and Jesus who then comes and says love your enemies?
yeah. I mean, I think you have to. The first principle that you should get into your head when or two principles you should have in your head when you approach the scriptures then these two principles come from the scriptures, is that God is holy, holy, holy. That he is uh, um, that he is so good and so perfect, that he sin and evil is he hates it. He hates sin. He hates evil rightly because it's good for him to hate sin and hate evil. That's the first principle. The second principle you should have in your head is that you are evil. Like human beings are, because of the fall, inherently wicked. We have desires that drive us and that we follow with full intent and will that ruin God's creation, destroy other creatures, and we turn ourselves in hostility against God Himself. And so, the perfectly just thing for that God to do would not just be to destroy the Canaanites; it would be to destroy all of humanity.
Yeah,
Right? Like,
Israelites included. Yeah.
There should have the human race should have ended if we're just talking pure justice. If God were only justice and not also love, the human race would have ended with Adam's taking that fruit, and it should have by 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 just standards. So when God floods the whole earth, He's being good. Uh, if you think of the most vile criminal and maybe a child molesting murderer, very few people think, "Oh, poor guy." Let's give him get him off on bond, give him like a little slap in the wrist, and let him go out there and, hey, you want to teach killer? No one thinks like that because we all know how dangerous someone like that is, right? We are the most dangerous creatures in God's creation. We are we are we are dangerous to ourselves, dangerous to others, dangerous to the world that He created. We are we are ruining His creation. So if you have those two principles, then you can begin to understand grace. You can understand,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
and what God has done to free us evil creatures from our wickedness and from the consequences of our wickedness, and how there's no injustice at all in either earthly justice that He enacts or in hell, uh, because uh, because of His great holiness and our great wickedness. Um, and so, but there's also just unfathomable love and mercy that God would give Himself over to death to save any of us. I mean, people wonder why doesn't God save everybody? Well, God shouldn't save anybody. It's just not, I mean, God does that. He's under absolutely no obligation to save any single person. We are all criminals deserving of death and hell. So the fact that even one person has been brought out of that fire is grace upon grace.
Right. We see his perfect justice um, meted out with the angels um, after they rebel. There's no offering of mercy to them. It's just
Right.
straight justice. And the angels that didn't fall um, saw his justice, and so they know he's merciful as well. But scriptures say they like they they ponder what's going on with with Christ in us, and what it's like to have done the fall thing, um, and yet be raised back up. uh, what?
Can you imagine the angels watching the crucifixion? I mean, like,
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
please say the word. Please, yes. Here are your legions of angels.
We're
Please.
ready. Yeah, yeah. He said, "If yeah, I could just say the word, like, then do it." What is going on? Um, yeah, that's really good. So, uh, what I'm gonna bring up Isaiah 45, verse 7, and ask if you can help us think through this, because at least from Tertullian, we know that Marcion hated this passage. Well, actually, I shouldn't say hated, used this passage to say that the God of the Old Testament's bad. Um, and it says this: I form light and create darkness. I make well-being and create calamity. And the calamity there is word for, it could be translated evil. Um, I am the Lord who does all these things. Marcion takes that and he says, "Oh, there you go. God creates evil. He's evil God." what what's going on there? What's Isaiah? What does God mean that He creates? I think the ESV translators are pretty purposeful in saying calamity rather than evil. If you read evil, we're like, oh, He
Right.
creates evil. He created sin.
Yeah. I mean, I think there it does mean evil in the sense of right, calamity, like natural disaster.
Israel on the Canaanites.
Right, right. But we do have to wrestle with the fact that evil would not exist had God not um, ordained that it does, right? And evil doesn't exist so much as it persists. It's parasitic. But if God had not had mercy on Adam, um, we wouldn't be wrestling with evil.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so God had mercy on Adam, and and now that was the perpetuity of evil on the planet. Why would God do that? And God, foreseeing that Adam would do what he would do, went ahead and created Adam. Why would God do that? And that's the question that the Odyssey wrestles with, trying
Yeah.
to bend the goodness of God in the face of the reality of evil. And there's all kinds of different answers to that question. And I'm not,
Yeah.
I, at the end of the day, I mean, I have my own ways of resolving that. And I think the best answer can be found in Romans 9, um, where Paul discusses God's glory being made manifest in his mercy and in his justice. Um, and the purpose of creation is to bring God glory, which is good because he is the good being, and so he must be glorified. If he doesn't glorify himself, he's not good. Um, so the Romans 9 indicates um, that God um, did not destroy and let perpetuate those who those people who reject him, um, so that one day his justice would be fully made manifest in them.
Mhm.
So that we, those who he's plucked out of the fire, will give glory to him. That's a deeply unsatisfying answer for a lot of people. I understand that, but it's
Yeah.
in the Bible, right? So we have
Well, and Paul knows it's unsatisfying.
yeah,
He
yeah,
knows that he knows that the Romans are going to be unsatisfied with that. He
mhm,
he he foresees their next
right,
question. Well, why does he why does he find fault?
right, because we yeah.
And then all he says is, "Well, who are you to ask that question?"
I mean, alongside that, we have to say, while God ordained evil, he's not the author of it, right? There's a difference between letting something come to pass and causing it, right?
Right.
So God, James tells us this. God doesn't get inside the human heart and take an innocent person and make him evil or make her evil. Um, the fall was the fall is our fault. It's not God's. God is not the cause of the fall. We are. There was a corporate human decision in our representative Adam to do this rebellion and follow Satan down that line.
Yeah.
Uh, God, however, I don't want to get too deep. I don't want to get too confusing for people. I'm a post-lapsarian, so I think that the decision to save some and not others uh, comes after, logically, not necessarily in time, logically after the fall, not before it. So I don't believe that God in eternity past said, "Okay, you make, and I'm gonna make the heart in such a way, and you, no, I'm gonna elect you in a different way." I think that was logically after God was dealing with a whole lump, as Paul says in Romans 9, that had departed and was hostile toward him. And he chose to have mercy on some and not others. But that's a we're getting into a question far beyond the question of Marcion. But you can see how much, okay, now, like just talking about this, you can see how people would say, no, I don't want a God that even, no, I don't want a God like that. Um, that sounds evil to me. I would rather have a God that doesn't
Well,
ordain such things.
yeah. I mean, it might be far down the road of Marcionism, but it does bring up a good response to Marcionism because um, I think what you said is really important to to remember that the reason that we are in this place where we have this issue between um, God's goodness and the evil in the world, um, His justice and His mercy. The reason is because He decided to be merciful, um, and it's in his act of being merciful that now we are in this place in between creation and restoration where we're gonna have the evil around. Um, and he has allowed that to stay in order that he can save and be merciful to many people. Um, and I think that's something that we miss a lot in that in the conversation of this type of conversation is that the whole reason is because he's merciful. If he were just a judge, like you said, then we wouldn't be here. You're right. And if you want justice, that's great, but just remember that that involves you.
That's right. Why doesn't God get rid of all the evil? Well,
Well,
look in the mirror.
oh,
He
yeah.
loves you.
That's why. That's why. Yeah, depend. That's um, yeah. Uh, so we're almost out of time, but Marcion, you alluded to it earlier, but Marcion, to support his ideas, he creates his own canon of scripture, and he has Luke, but it's all edited, and then he has the letters of Paul also edited. Um, so he I think we may have talked about it when we were discussing canon, but he's the first official list that we have. Is that correct? He's the first official list
Yeah,
book. Yeah,
yeah.
long
And
list, but
but it's a
incomplete
list.
incomplete list, I should say.
Right, right. Yeah, he is. And so, the church had kind of not kind of the church was in the process in the second century, which is almost complete by then of receiving the canon. So the minute the last apostle put down his pen is the minute the canon was closed. That's the divine canon. Michael Kruger has a lot. We talked to this last time. Michael Kruger
Yeah.
talks a lot about it. But it's involved. But for the church to recognize it took a process of reception. Some books were immediately recognized as apostolic, and that was the criteria. If the book is apostolic, it's part of the canon of Scripture. And so, the Gospels were immediately recognized that way. The four Gospels, letters of Paul, when it was they were all recognized pretty early on. Some Hebrews may have been misidentified. I don't think it was, but some people think it was. Many people think it was. But there are the real questions like books like Second Peter maybe, and I think Second John, Third John might have some. No, I think those are pretty sure. Uh, anyway, there's some books that were questionable
Right.
still in the second century.
Um, yeah. No, I'm sorry. I interrupted you. I think Second Peter was
One of the big ones, yeah,
disputed.
because it was so different. The Greek is so different from one book to the other. But and there's overlap with Jude, and Second Peter too. But anyway, that was eventually recognized as coming from Peter as well. Um, but there wasn't a list because it was just kind of understood.
Yeah.
The apostolic books are the books, right? And so then Marcion comes along and creates his own canon, and that does cause a good reaction on the part of the church. Say, "Oh no, we better identify those books that we are sure about that have come to us from the apostles of Jesus." And that starts this process. We have the Muratorian canon, I think, which we date to 180, 170, which is, I think, the first Orthodox list of canonical books that we have. And I think only Second Peter is missing from that. There's one book,
I think
or two books missing from that.
it's
But
22. I think it's 22 books out of the 27. Um, but the core is there. All the
yeah,
disputed, like the disputed ones, and they're the smaller books, the ones you just were mentioning. The things that the church were, the books that the church were disputing, not in like a way that it doesn't seem, at least historically, that it was like all the church were disputing it. You had some that were accepting it, others that were trying to work through it, and so it's
right. Like I think like Hebrews was widely accepted in the West, but in
yeah,
the East it hadn't been
mm,
circulated there for a long time, and so
right,
they, or maybe it was the other way around. I can't remember which one, but one side of the church had Hebrews for a while, and the other side didn't.
yeah. It takes time for
Yeah,
those to get across. Um, but I think I mentioned this the last time. we met, but I think Marcion is a great witness to the um, early Christians' understanding of the canon. Because if there wasn't uh, i- i- if there wasn't a belief that these books were authoritative, then Marcion writing this list down, is arbitrary. So he doesn't. Why do you need this? There's no
Right.
books that people accept.
Yeah. That's
So
a great point.
it's like, so when he writes that down, it's like, so the church did think
Already.
these books were authoritative, and he needed to change it uh, to fit his theology. And so you know, although he was grossly mistaken, thanks be to God that
Yeah.
that happened, because then, as you said, it pushed the church to write down more explicitly what they saw as authoritative. It's fascinating to me, though, that Marcion felt this need to have books to support his theology, because I guess all the everyone does that. Yeah, it's you
Book of Mormon.
idea, and you need the Bible to support it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once again, you can make the Bible support whatever you want.
Well, right. I mean, the Gnostics had their own books.
Yeah,
They made their own books because the Bible wasn't. You can't get everything you need out of that. So you
yeah,
have the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Thomas, and then in our modern day we have the Book of Mormon, and
yeah, yep.
so yeah, that's you have to find a way to wedge your theology in, if it's not orthodox, into the Christian faith, and that requires some tooling with the Bible, or some additions to it, or subtractions from it.
Yeah.
And that happens. That can have. This is a warning to preachers here. I've mentioned this in my sermon on Sunday. Is that you can do that. You can become a functional Martian. Like, you can say, "Oh, I have truly affirm all the Bible is true." Da, da, da. But you could also, for your own will desire to reach out to your congregation, to not offend people, to not drive people away, you can avoid preaching on some passages. You can skip over some texts. You can just not bother with certain things that are revealed in the scriptures, and you aren't necessarily denying that they're inerrant, infallible, and from God, but you are, in a very practical way, communicating that. So this is why, on the one hand, the lectionary is so helpful, because if you're going to be a lectionary preacher, you're going to preach lectionary. That's what you.
Yeah.
And although, caution to lectionary writers: don't craft your lectionaries to avoid difficult difficult doctrines. Um,
Yeah.
and then secondly, if you're one of those preachers who preaches through books, like I hope you are, um, then you know don't skip over a passage or a chapter that you don't like. You got to preach it. Your people expect you to preach it, and it is God's word, and it's for them, and you can't withhold their food.
Oh, what did you have to preach, Matt, that made you need to say that?
I have to preach chapters 8 and 9. I'm in the middle of preaching chapters 8 and 9 of Second Corinthians, which I've been dreading from the very beginning of Second Corinthians. It's all about money. I hate preaching money. I hate preaching about giving. I'm just not just because I don't want to play into the stereotype of preachers wanting money all the time. I hate that too, but also because it's just the subject just doesn't appeal to me. I am personally bored by talking about money. I'm not
Yeah,
excited about it.
I'm there with you, man. I get it. Yeah, and it was a great sermon, though. By the way, uh,
Thank you.
very good sermon. You're listening to this. Um, Wait, are our sermons on a podcast?
Yes.
Or, what is it? The Good Shepherd Binghamton on iTunes?
No,
Or what is that?
I
Can you
forgot what
you can tell people so they can listen to sermons?
I know it is on iTunes. I don't.
Okay,
mm,
the if you go on iTunes, and I'm probably going too far, but I'm already in it. So, and I think it's Good Shepherd Binghamton, maybe.
Yeah, I think that.
Uh, yeah. You do Good Shepherd Binghamton, I think you'll find our church, our church's sermons. But yeah, you can go back and listen to the sermon that Matt was just referring to, which is a great sermon. Yeah, I did uh, particularly like how you brought in Marcionism there at the beginning. I thought that was pretty clever. Um, all right, very good. Well, we're out of time. Um, Matt, thank you for helping us think through this, and thanks for also leading this class at Good Shepherd, going through ancient heresies. It's such a fun topic.
I enjoy it. I enjoyed every. We did it like 5 or 6 years ago, and
Yeah,
I've been chomping at the
mhm,
bit to get back to it. So
yeah, that's your bread and butter.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, very good. Thanks everyone for uh, tuning in live. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and thanks to those listening in the future. Um, and if you have any comments, any thoughts, questions, whatever, you can. I don't know. I think you can reach out to us on Substack. I don't know how that works. You can also email us at cranmerfellowship@gmail.com. If there's ever anything that you want us talking about, you can reach out to us and let us know anything that's on your mind. Um, but with that, we'll sign off, and Lord willing, we'll see you next week. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
See ya. Have a great night.
You too.